What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Morning Brew Podcast. I'm your host, Kayla, and I'm interviewing creatives every other week to bring you the human experience behind their art. Today, I have a really special treat for you. I have an intimacy coordinator from Quinn on the show, which I'm super excited to share with you. But before we get into that, please make sure that you're following the Morning Brew Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Instagram so that you don't miss any updates or any cool episodes coming your way. I'd like to introduce you to Jamie Monahan, an intimacy coordinator, a director, a child actor. She's so many different things, and more importantly, she is an amazing human being. I really enjoyed this conversation with Jamie. It's probably one of my favorite conversations I've had to date on this show, and I can't wait to share it with you. I hope you enjoy it just as much as I do. So, guys, here is Jamie. Hi, Jamie. Thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Same.
Can we start off with your name and where you're from for the listeners?
Yes. So my name is Jamie Monahan. I live in New York and I work by Coastal.
Awesome. So I have a couple get to know you questions that are kind of random right off the bat. Do you have a favorite summer snack?
I love lemonade and chocolate chip cookies, like kind of like a gooey, in between like a gooey, crunchy cookie at the beach. I would say those are my favorite snacks to pack.
That sounds lovely. Do you have any niche interests or hobbies?
Yes. I love baking and like cake decorating. So I've gotten kind of
Oh.
specific in my oh my gosh, the pastry nozzle tips. So I
Oh,
have a
okay.
collection of really cool tips for different kinds of piping and like creative cake making. I love to bake. Yeah.
That's so fun. I did like a cupcake decorating class a couple years ago, and they showed us how to make succulents with the different tips, which was really neat.
Wait, that's very cool. I've seen like succulent cupcakes, which I think is so cool because then when they're all together, it looks like a little succulent garden. Very
Yeah,
cool.
it was really cool. I can't remember how they did it though, but I'll have to find a picture and send it to you. Okay, what is your comfort movie or TV show?
I love Gilmore Girls. I think I've watched it and rewatched it multiple times. I love While You Were Sleeping, but that's like my holiday comfort movie. I like Up
Mm.
and Wall-E if you're looking for kind of like a cry, but also some happiness. And Practical Magic, great movie in the fall. Like every year I have to watch it. I'm pretty much in love with Sandra Bullock. Like she's the winner here.
Those are all great options. Okay, and the last one, can you share one personal goal that you have for this year?
I am a goal digger, is what I like to say. And I I have a lot of goals and resolutions for 2026. One that I've had for the past few years that I have successfully completed every year is sending handwritten cards every month
Oh,
to friends and family and people that are on my mind. And I love snail mail, and I just think it's so nice to get something in your mailbox that's not a bill.
yeah, I agree.
Right. So for me, that's probably been like my most rewarding goal. But in terms of intimacy, last year I wanted to do 25 projects in 2025, and I did 26. And so this year I want to do 26 in 2026, but I'm hoping I do more than that.
I think that's achievable for sure.
Yeah, I'm currently at 17, so we're
Oh, wow.
making a lot of progress. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, well, so that kind of leads into everything. You are so talented. You do so many different things, but we're here to talk about your work as an intimacy coordinator. Can you explain to me what is considered intimacy in this line of work?
That's a great question. And I'll say, in terms of like legality for the union, they have said that an intimacy coordinator is needed for scenes of simulated sex and nudity. However, the spectrum of intimacy is really wide and complex. And I would say it has, on the low level, would be hand holding, hugs, light quality of touch, all the way up to the higher end, which would be simulated sex, but also even there's a range within sex too. Is it consensual, non-consensual?
Sure.
Is it, I don't love the term vanilla, but are we working with like more common depictions of sex in media, or are we looking towards like kink, BDSM, alternative things that we haven't seen as well represented?
That's super cool. And something that I learned when I was listening to you talk about this on other podcasts was that intimacy is so much more than just, the simulated sex. And you had mentioned in another interview about like working with actors staging things like sexual assault or acts of kind of sexual violence. How does that affect or change how you approach that with an actor?
I think what really changes is the risk factor. So anytime we add sexual assault or intimacy and violence, you need additional training. We're all trained in trauma-informed training and mental health first aid, but I would say you would want additional training in both of those, just because we don't know what actors have lived experience with trauma, with sexual assault or abuse of any kind. And even if you have gone to therapy and you've done all the work, there are still things that could be very triggering when you're put into that environment and you're acting, because your body doesn't know that it's not real.
Right.
So having a very clear protocols set up in advance, and then creating that safe space for actors, making sure they know that at any time they can take a break, that there are resources for them if they need them. Really working with the actors to create that kind of opportunity to check in constantly while we're filming those types of scenes. So I'm always present during intimate scenes, but I have an extra watchful eye when we're filming these kind of like higher risk scenes. And it's not just the actors that I'm watching. I'm also watching our crew, because a lot of people forget that the boom operator is in the room often during these scenes and just slightly out of frame. Like we don't
so
ever
true.
see them as an audience, but they're there and they're in the room, so that emotional feeling is heavy in the space and they're right in it. So I think making sure that there are protocols that if they want to take it easy or not take it easy, and all crew and actors should know when we're filming scenes of sexual assault and have advanced notice, and they should be able to, crew especially, opt out if needed. Or I think, and that's really hard because sometimes you're working with really small productions and small budgets, but I just think knowing, hey, we're going to film this scene today, it's this type of scene, and giving people a chance to say, I might find someone to cover me that day.
Sure.
And not need to know why. We don't need to. It's like, if that's a boundary for them, we should honor it, and then just find a replacement if needed. So just really thinking about crew and cast, and it's not just the actors.
That's a really good point. I didn't think about that. How would you, I don't know if you've had to deal with this or not, but how would you handle if someone does kind of have a negative reaction? I don't want to say like when something goes wrong, because it's not wrong, it's just a reaction
Right.
and a response.
Yeah.
But how do you handle when someone is more uncomfortable than maybe they anticipated.
I mean, I think that can happen a lot, right? You don't necessarily know that something is a boundary or that your boundary has been crossed until it's crossed, you know? So there are times where an actor might feel like this is within what they feel capable of and they feel confident doing. And then on the day, it just feels different than what they expected. Usually, I mean, I find that having an intimacy coordinator helps prevent those things from happening. It doesn't stop them, but having these conversations in advance before we're shooting, building a relationship with the cast, that all helps with what we're doing in terms of like creating safety on set and creating an environment where we could have these kind of conversations of like, hey, I need 5. And then offering an opportunity for actors to step out of the moment, to take a break, to adjust if we need to adjust choreography. And then again, we're trained in trauma-informed training. At least we all have some versions of trauma-informed training. And I was wonderfully blessed with a mother who my entire life has been a part of the mental health industry. She has worked in the ER as a psych nurse, and now she's a nurse practitioner who works with people who have different either neurodivergencies or everything within the spectrum of mental health. So I've been blessed with the language of just being in proximity to that. And I am trained to recognize when I think something is about to happen so that I can kind of catch it before. Breath, getting the actors back in their body. And this one's a fun one, but sour candy. I usually always have sour candy on hand, especially for some filming difficult scenes, because your mouth, when you're in a fight or flight response, stops producing saliva, which is part of or reduces the amount of saliva that's produced. So that triggers a fear response in the body. And one way to counteract that is sour candy, because sour candy will pull focus to your mouth and create saliva production, and will in some ways bring your attention back into your body.
That's really neat. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Just keep a fanny pack of like Sour Patch Kids at all times.
Yeah, it helps with like if you get really, really sour candy. I keep Sour Patch Kids because I think they're sour enough. But if you get like Warheads or like really sour candies, that's supposed to help for panic attacks, anxiety attacks.
Oh, interesting.
It just pulls focus from where the spiral is happening.
Okay, that's good to know. I might keep some on hand now for,
Yeah.
you know. Okay, so you are an intimacy coordinator for Quinn. And on behalf of my listeners and also women everywhere, thank you for your service. We can't talk about Quinn specifically, but I do have questions about kind of the audio aspect of everything.
Yeah.
How does your approach differ working with just audio versus when you have visual?
What I think is so interesting about audio is I found that actors are more game for choreography with a partner in a space. So acting out scenes of intimacy, then voicing scenes of intimacy. And that's not just for audio, it's also when we're on set and we need more vocal sounds, whether that's from simulated sex or like a moment of climax or sounds of arousal. It seems like the sounding of the intimacy is where people naturally get more nervous. And I think that's because for most people, references of what that sound like are either lived experiences, porn
Mm.
or film and TV. And I feel like film and TV tends to just show extremes, either really bad sounding sounds or kind of like very neutral middle ground
Sure.
sounds. So you don't really have much to pull from as an actors. And I think that's where the nervousness comes in. And our voice is so unique to each individual person. It's like as specific and unique as a fingerprint. So I think when we're voicing intimacy, it just feels way more connected to you, the person. So my job is always to remind actors that we want to separate those two things. I'm not asking how you orgasm or climax. I'm asking how the character does. And when we can focus it back to character, that tells a more unique story. Like, does this person, are they vocal, more vocal? If they're soft spoken in life, but then like really vocal in the bedroom, that's an interesting character choice. Or vice versa. Maybe they're really quiet in the bedroom or for intimacy scenes, but then they're like really loud and vocal in their personal life, like like work and how they present. So really thinking about what does our character sound like. And also you could show confidence that way. Like if someone feels really confident, they might feel more or sound more like comfortable with their vocal range, while if this is like a first time intimacy experience for the character, then they might be more timid or shy. So really bringing it back to character usually helps change that and separate that. I'm again not asking to hear you and your sounds, but to see what this character sounds like.
I definitely can understand why it would be, if someone's like, okay, now, pretend like you're orgasming, like just on the spot.
Yeah.
That's just a lot, but also like a little story for you. When I was in college, my friend took me to a live Rocky Horror performance, and they do the Virgin Games where if you haven't seen a live performance, they like make you do silly stuff in front of everybody. And this one group that went before my group, they went down the line. They're like, name your favorite villain. And then they went back down and were like, now do an impression of that villain having like the most toe curling orgasm. I was actually a virgin. So I'm like, I like panicked because I thought I had to do that too. And I turned to this woman next to me and I was like, what if I like don't know, like I don't I'm like trying to say like I've never like experienced that before, and she's like, just fake it like we always do, am I right? And I'm like, what? I'm like so confused. But yeah, so I definitely see how having like a intimacy coordinator or someone kind of talk you through that would be a lot more chill than just on the
Yeah.
fly.
And that has happened many times where like someone volunteers personal information, and I find it helpful but not necessary. Like but I have had actors who are like, I've never kissed before, or um I've never been with a female partner before,
Sure.
or I've never I don't know, like I think a lot of times we've never had these experiences, but also actors get cast to play doctors and chefs and like maybe other things they've never done before,
That's so
right?
true.
So, but for some reason, when it comes to intimacy, it feels, I mean, it's more intimate, it's more personal, it's more, I think, vulnerable and just, it's you. Like, it feels like it's you sharing a private moment, and that's what I'm trying to be like, it's not your private moment, it's the character's
Right.
private moment. And that can kind of help, which in the scenario you shared, by making it the villain orgasming, the villain character orgasming, rather than asking people to be on stage just making orgasm sounds, they probably got a little bit more freedom from people, because they framed it in that way, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And so we kind of mentioned how with audio, there's a little bit less to play off of for the actors. But in addition to that, some of the audios is just like one person in the context of like you're with the listener rather
Yeah.
than two people playing off of each other. How do you kind of get the actors into a space when it's literally just them?
I think I think you really have to focus on painting the picture of what's happening to you and what is happening in the space. It's so funny in terms of when you're in the booth, because it's really just like a closet size, sometimes bigger than a closet size, but it's like really small room.
Yeah.
But you can go and watch ADR Foley artists or like actors doing ADR for action scenes, and they are fully running. They're really acting out and getting their body in the like energy level that you would need to be because like even sitting down for a lot of voice recording is not great because it sounds like you're sitting, which you wouldn't think you could hear that, but you just can hear that the full body is not engaged with the voice. So, and there are things you can do as an actor to train yourself and your body and produce different sounds. Like there's lots of actors who can play kind of like both genders. They'll voice like female characters and then they'll voice male characters. But you just have to paint a very clear picture of what's happening. And also you, the voice actor, needs to know exactly what's happening. Because if you're, in terms of intimacy, kissing someone against the wall and then you move to the bed, we need to hear that process of
Right.
moving from the wall to the bed. And some of that is the brilliant post-production teams that add like the steps and they create the soundscape that's happening, but you also need the actor to kind of like put in that timing of getting from here to here and then add the breath that they're walking in a space. Or if the actor ends up picking up the character and then carries them over.
Sure.
You need to hear that in the voice that they like lifted someone and now are carrying someone versus just like do 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 like because what's interesting is I don't know that everyone can hear what's wrong with it, like audiences.
Sure.
It just doesn't, you just kind of like, I don't know, like there's a disconnect, but I think the untrained ear will pick up on the disconnect but not know what it is.
Okay.
And then if you're trained for it, you're like, oh, they needed to add footsteps, or like we didn't hear him get from here to there, or something was lost, like I lost where we were in the space.
Okay, that makes sense. And with audio, that's like so important because it's kind of just like, to the imagination where
Yeah.
you are and what all is happening. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so you, actor, have to have a super clear picture so then you can translate that through your voice and your actions to the listener. And then the listener's imagination will fill in a ton of gaps, right? And even some listeners are like, I know that this actor is voicing this character, but they sometimes will see, their romantic dream partner in place of that actor that they know who's voicing it. So that's cool too, is that voice acting and like this audio gives you the opportunity to kind of to fill in the gaps with what your fantasy is while listening to it unfold. It's crazy. It's wild.
It's super cool. It reminds me of like reading how the author clearly had their own version of these characters when they were written, but as the reader, everyone's interpretation is going to be so different.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it's like. And it would be cool to see how everyone would put it together in their mind. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm sure we would all have a different version of what it looks like, the final product.
Definitely. So you mentioned breath work. And I like know what you mean, but I also am not trained to like pick up on that kind of thing. How do you like do actors know about this, or do you have to kind of clue them in the intimacy setting? Like how do you kind of help them with that kind of thing?
It's so interesting. There's so many different training pathways for acting, and there's also people who kind of got picked up off the street and started working professionally, like so in I never want to make assumptions of what someone's
Mm-hmm.
training was, but if you went to theater school or like a theater training program, you should have received a really good vocal training within your like undergraduate or whatever program you went to, that will help with your voice not getting tired from how you use it, um, how to safely yell without going
That's a good
hoarse.
one.
Like,
Okay.
there's a lot of things that you learn when you take acting for voice or like voice acting workshops and stuff like that. Um, but I've worked with a lot of people who haven't done that. And so then you're trying to help them preserve their voice for the duration of the day because it's long days in the studio. Um, or it can be. Or like imagine someone who's voicing a full audio book. It's like that is such a journey
Oh
to
yeah.
speak all of that. So you want to make sure that you're doing things to protect the voice, tea, water.
Mm.
If your voice is like, call it like claggy, or if you produce a lot of saliva, the one thing you wouldn't want in this scenario is like sour
Uh,
candy will not be helpful
sure.
because you'll start hearing like that. You'll hear like
Oh, okay.
extra like sounds
Like mouth
and
noises.
yeah, mouth noises, mouth sounds. So things like a green apple can really help clear your mouth sounds. You can definitely hear sounds of actors being hungry, like the pre-grumbling stomach sounds. So you get like pre-hunger sounds and then you get post-lunch sounds. So anyway, in terms of breath, which was your question, I mean, breath can be really powerful in storytelling, especially when we're not seeing what's happening. But I think when you watch a movie, you can always pinpoint the moment. I can always pinpoint the moment where a character falls in love for the other character. I feel like it's a look, but if I had to give that look a sound, I would say it's an inhale, like a soft inhale. So you see, she comes down the beautiful spiral staircase in the
Hmm.
gorgeous dress, and you see her for the first time. It's like a soft
Hmm.
inhale. So if we're meeting our like interest and we're at the fades where there's already some chemistry happening there, I want to hear that. If we can't see it, we need to hear it. But even when we're working on stage or film and TV, I still think using breath work during those moments is great because you can see it in the actors' like shoulders and body, like a sigh of relief or satisfaction relaxes the whole face and the shoulders, and you just kind of like sigh into it. So I think using the breath for those stories can really help. Like, are you sighing into the kiss? Or is the kiss so good you're like, ah, like that's
No, that's true.
amazing. Or is it like a nervous? Nervous energy is like quick breath, almost like not panting, but like like it's just like
Yeah.
quick breaths. And that if you're like nervous, excited to kiss someone or be intimate with someone, it could be quick, short breaths. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's really playing with it, and it's a lot of me testing things out in my apartment.
It's super
Like, what does
interesting
it
though.
sound like?
That's, I do the same thing sometimes, but no one needs to know that. So I heard that you have some pretty unique ways of coaching people into achieving certain kind of sound effects to go with scenes of intimacy that aren't actually intimate actions. Can you tell me a little
Yeah.
bit more about those?
I learned during the movie The Tale, which is a really great movie, difficult to watch, but great movie. Laura Dern is in it and she's amazing. And the way that they talked about how they worked with the child actor on set was really incredible. And I read every article I could possibly read because it's a story of sexual assault with a minor. So I just had so many questions on how did they shoot that? How was it filmed safely? And one of the things that they talked about was desexualized language with the minor actor and how they would frame things in ways that were completely unrelated to intimacy or sex at all. And that thought has been very helpful in terms of sounds from actors because we make a lot of sounds in life that could be used for other things. Like pain and pleasure are so closely linked that then tapping into that, like, okay, if we're thinking that pain and pleasure sound similar, I'm not getting the sounds of pleasure that I want. Can I move into pain and
Mm.
see if I can get it that way? Because usually if there's a pain, it's like a, or like a, like
Yeah.
that kind of like crunch effort of like contracting your abs, which is
Yeah.
something you would do if in a thrusting kind of motion,
Right.
that like that it could sound like something else, or using sounds of satisfaction to like sounds of satisfaction in other things to be sounds of satisfaction and pleasure, whether that's like food, you're eating ice cream and it's like really great ice cream, or you just had the best meal of your life. Some of those satisfied sounds are also the same satisfied sounds that we find in intimacy.
That's super interesting. I'm like very intrigued, but also thinking about it as you're talking about it. And I'm like, I think I probably sound more like I'm having an intimate moment when I'm doing my workouts than
Yeah.
like actually.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, especially what's interesting too about workouts and guys at the gym is sometimes they over exaggerate their sounds. But if you only heard the sounds, you're like, huh,
yeah.
like, okay. Or sometimes it's the reverse. Like if you're doing a horror film, but you have a person who's screaming and it sounds more like a pleasure scream, you're like, wait a second. We need this doesn't sound like the right type of scream for this scenario. um, let's try to like usually what it means is bringing it down like a lower register and placing it different places in your body, whether you're screaming up top like in the throat chest area or you're screaming from your like belly, like a low belly, like it's different than that you know
That makes a lot of
so
sense. Okay, and
yeah.
so since you mentioned the tail, I do want to ask just very briefly, like, what kind of measures are in place when working with minors? Like, are there different rules? Are there like extra precautions? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, so there are a ton of rules now, more than there were back when I was acting. I started as a child actor, and there are a lot more rules and protections for actors, and also who gets the money, because back when I was
Mm,
acting, they didn't have rules, and it just would go to your guardian or your
sure.
parents. And now in certain states, every state's different, which is one of the difficulties of working with child actors is that there are different child labor laws in each state. So you have to be aware of that. And then, but now they have a trust usually that has to be established, at least in New York, where that money, like a good percentage of the money will go there and it's only to be accessed by the child actor, which is great.
That's awesome.
So that protects from kind of like some of the stories we've heard in the past of like kids being really successful, but then not having any money to show from it because their parents who were acting as their managers then like misused the money. And then they can only work for a certain amount of hours, which means you have to be smarter in terms of like scheduling and setting things up in advance. But to me, it's great because it often involves more conversations around those particular scenes. And I find that anytime you prep more in advance, the day of shooting is so much smoother because we've kind of talked through all the scenarios and the possibilities. And then luckily, I don't work too much with minors in intimacy scenes, but I have done a few. And thinking of what do they need to know? What are extra ways we can protect them? There's closed set protocols, but what else can we do to protect them? And then making sure that we get consent almost 2 or 3 times more than we do on average with adults, because you want to make sure that they're not being influenced by their parents or they're not trying to please either their parents or the director or producers. You really need to build it. You need to take more time building trust so that the actor feels like they can come to you if something happens and that they're not going to get in trouble. So there's lots of things you want to do to establish a very consent forward and child-friendly environment that then you can do your best work in the more limited amount of time that you have with the actors too.
Okay, and is the consent like with the child actor, or does it go to the parent because they're like underage? Like, how does that kind of work?
Yeah, it does go to the parent, but I make sure that, I mean, both have to consent,
Sure,
you know?
right. Yeah.
And I'm just very aware if you have a younger actor who's like constantly like looking to their parent, because I want to make sure you want to do this and it's not just your parent wants you to do this. So trying to find ways to like really connect. And you know, so parents are usually really good, the ones I've worked with, and they will be present for the conversation, but sometimes they're off camera or they're in the room, but they like give us semi-privacy so we can have a conversation.
Okay.
And then but they've been in the room the whole time, and then they'll come in closer for when we're having a conversation like the 3 of us.
Gotcha. Okay. So, how much of intimacy coordination is just like really, really good communication skills? Like, can you translate this stuff into your everyday life?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, a lot of the training, so there's choreography, obviously, and masking techniques, and you need to understand camera angles and frames and on-set dynamics, but a huge part of the work that we do is understanding consent on a really deep level, understanding boundaries, um, bystander intervention, how to be a true ally and what that looks like, anti-racism, anti-capitalism, or like understanding that the capitalistic structure is kind of anti not just creativity, but also it is a pressure to consent. If you're trying to be the best employee that you can be, you often put your boundaries aside in order to do that. So, I mean, it's a lot of theory, a lot of inner self work. I feel like I've grown so much as a person just from doing this work, and hopefully a much better communicator than I started out as.
In a kind of role where you are working with something that's so raw and so vulnerable for so many people on the project, how do you personally signify like I've done a good job with this?
I think I get a lot of positive feedback, which helps. And I also think something that helps is being a part of an emerging industry where there was so much harm previously. Like like I said, I've been acting since I was a kid, so I knew that there was regular stories of harm and trauma happening. But as I became an intimacy coordinator, I have heard so many more stories, and I think we are such a breath of fresh air to most people. And it's not just the actors who feel that way, it's the crew, and a lot of the directors too. I mean, I've been very lucky with the people I've worked with that they walk away feeling like they don't want to do another production without an intimacy coordinator, which is kind of my, mission, is to make it so that you see the value and you get what you wanted in terms of storytelling while also honoring actors' boundaries, and everyone was excited to work on the project and it felt collaborative and safe. So I get a lot of feedback from the actors. I get a lot of feedback from production, which is great. And I think for me, I feel like, I mean, there's certainly times where I walk away and I'm like, oh, I could have done more, or like, did I do enough? And it's really hard to be a department of one where you have like the entire cast and the entire crew and one intimacy coordinator. And some people will kind of feel like maybe we're like HR, or we're here to solve or fix all problems, but that is a insane responsibility to put on one person.
Yeah.
One of my colleagues called it the human fire extinguisher. Like we can't like just go in and being like,
Yeah.
But what I can do is help people if something happens, and I can address it in a way that people feel seen, valued, and heard in the moment, and we can hopefully move on from anything. If anything happened, like a boundary was crossed or someone discovered a boundary they didn't know they had, or we just need to readjust choreography or something like that. Yeah.
You know,
I don't know if you ever get like lots of gold stars, perfect check mark, you know?
it's rare as a grown-up, I will say.
Yeah.
But I wish we had them, you know? You went shopping today, here's a gold star.
Yeah. And I feel too like as long as I'm getting 1% better, well, more than 1%, but like if we think of our in any aspect of our life of getting 1% better every day, then the exponential growth that can happen from that, or like the compound growth that can happen from that, is more achievable than saying, well, next time I'm going to give 110% of what I did this time, and then it will be better, you know, because burnout is real, and I can't hold space for others if I'm trying to operate at perfection. I think the way I want to walk into spaces is human first, artist second, and humans will always make mistakes. Like,
Yeah.
you're just bound to make a mistake. You're bound to say something wrong. You're bound to mess up, have an accident. And if we approach work like that, knowing that things will happen, there's a lot more grace in moving forward through those mistakes, I think.
I think that's a really great way to put it. That's really beautiful.
Thanks. I have to remind myself to give myself grace too, you know?
Honestly. So unfortunately, it feels like being on the wrong end of sexual assault is so common these days, like myself included. And I'm so passionate about film, TV, stage, and I'm a fan of your work. So I do just want to, thank you for the work that you are doing to make this a safe space and to educate people with, your everyday job to kind of just make things better for people. I truly don't see a downside to having an intimacy coordinator on a project.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me too. I'm sorry that you have lived experience, and I'm also not surprised in our current world. And I think that by talking about it and sharing our experiences and working towards creating the world we want to exist,
Mm-hmm.
and having more advocacy and having more allyship and bringing that into media, which I think is a lot of people's first foray into like sex ed, truly.
Truly, yeah.
So if we can tell more authentic stories of intimacy in film, TV, audio, wherever you're consuming entertainment, then I'm hoping that has a trickle down effect into society where we are asking for continued consent during moments of intimacy, that we are leading with compassion first, and not alienating people because they're different, especially in intimacy. So, and there's so many great shows that are doing that. Like, I'm a big fan of, obviously, Heated Rivalry, and I loved Off Campus. I thought Off Campus did a beautiful interpretation of someone who is experiencing or recovering from post-traumatic stress from sexual assault. And I think that was beautiful. It was such a wonderful representation that I haven't seen before.
I felt that way about Sex Education on Netflix.
Yes!
They have such a variety of
I
different
love it.
like intimate experiences, and they're like funny, they're traumatizing.
Yes.
I'm so into it. They did such a great job.
They did an amazing job. And I thought it was so cool too, because like you have the mom who's the sex therapist and then her kid, and then there's even like a shame a little bit, but we're also trying to like break down that shame of, you know, being able to talk about this stuff. Because I feel like if we all talked about intimacy a little bit more, we would find commonality. We would feel like maybe some parts that we've been told to keep secret no longer need to be secret because we see seen by somebody else who feels the same way as you do. So I think, again, communication, you said it, like communication's the key, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy that they just bring to light a bunch of questions that probably don't get covered in like standard sex ed. Like they teach you about, STIs, but no one covers like, is my vagina pretty?
Right.
Like that's something that people don't talk about. And I'm like, that's a concern that I have. So
Yeah.
I appreciate them talking about it.
I think, yeah, great show. I know the intimacy coordinator on that show, and he did a fantastic job. And I think the reason why some of these shows that have really great intimacy that we're loving, they all had intimacy coordinators. So I don't think that that's not telling, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jamie, my last question for you comes from my last guest. I do a segment called Artists Ask Artists, and we've got a really long daisy chain that's been going on for a year and a half. So, my last guest was my good friend Matthew Pinkney. He's a screenwriter and an author, and he would like to ask you, what is one piece of media that you think everyone needs to consume?
I think the book that most impacted me recently, and recently by like the last 5-10 years, is Cheryl Strayed's Tiny Beautiful Things. I think that book is a lesson in empathy, because it's all these stories about people's lives, what they're going through, the traumas, the joys, the heartbreak. And I don't think you can read that book and not be changed for the better in knowing that what people are going through or experiencing in their private lives, you may never know about. And I just think that's really powerful. And then I saw that adapted into a play, which was really interesting. But I think that was a very powerful piece in terms. Oh, and then I worked on it. I worked on the play. So seeing it, reading it as a book, then seeing it as a play, and then being a part of the intimacy. I did the intimacy direction for that show. Was really powerful and cool and like multi-leveled access to this like piece of art that really changed me in a profound way. So I highly recommend that book.
That is so cool. I'm gonna like immediately add that to my reading list, and I'll
Yay!
probably end up messaging you when I read it.
Yes, please. It's good. It's very good. And heartbreaking.
I'm
but good.
excited about it. It's giving the vibes of like the Chicken Soup for the Soul books.
Yes.
And I like
Yeah.
loved reading those as a teenager.
Yeah, it's exactly like that, but a lot of intimacy and also Cheryl Strayed is just such a beautiful writer. You know, she wrote Wild, which, you know, was Reese Witherspoon's Oscar nominee. I don't remember if she won. Maybe she won for that. Anyway.
Good for her. Okay, so you can ask a question now for my next guest. I believe it's either a band or an actor, but you can ask like truly anything.
I think I want to ask kind of like the reverse question of like, what's your guilty pleasure when it comes to media? It could be in any
Ooh,
form
that's a
of
good one.
media. What's your guilty pleasure that in some ways you feel, I don't want to say ashamed because I don't want anyone to feel ashamed, but just like, what's the thing that you're not advertising that you're obsessed with?
Okay, that's a great question.
I don't know what mine would be because I'm pretty vocal about like what I'm obsessed
Yeah,
with.
I'm like,
So.
I kind of have no filter, so 9
Yeah,
times out of
same.
10, people are gonna know what I already would keep secret.
Okay, well, this isn't necessarily a secret, but I'd say like not a lot of people know this, but I love watching Below Zero.
What is
I
that?
got into it during the pandemic. It's a bunch of people who live in Alaska in the middle of nowhere, and they basically have to survive off the land.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, the weather is constantly below zero. And I find it really fascinating. And that's it. It's not like, I don't know. I don't know how much value it adds to my life, except for I know how to like start a fire and like survive in the wilderness. I mean, I think I do.
You never know when
watching.
that could be useful. I think mine is like medical dramas. Like I'm a germaphobe in real life, but I'm obsessed with a medical drama. And I'm like, I've watched enough shows. I'm like, I could probably perform an emergency tracheotomy.
Yeah. That's awesome. I read somewhere once that said that, I forget the percentage, but a very high percentage of men believe that they could fly a plane if they needed to. And it's something like 95% of men. It's like a, just
Really?
a very high.
That's a really high number.
Yeah, that they think they could fly a plane if it ever came to it.
Okay,
I mean, wow. Okay.
All right. There's way too many buttons in the cockpit for me, but if you think you could do it, that's fine.
Maybe we just all need to lead with the confidence of a man who believes he could fly a plane.
Put that on a t-shirt. Okay, and then last but not least, I like to leave shameless self-promotion for all of my guests. So anything at all that you want to promote, Jamie, now is the time, and I will link it all in the description.
I have a bunch of things coming up. I don't know when they'll be released, but basically a lot of what I created or worked on last year will be coming out this year or the following year, which is, it's cool. You have to wait, but it will be coming out soon. I think Instagram is my most active, and I have a couple of projects I can talk about coming out.
Right.
I'm
Exciting.
speaking at the Sexological Health Alliance in Denver in October, and I'm really excited about that. And that's about it so far.
Awesome. Well, I'll be sure to plug your Instagram so that people can find you and also follow all of the projects that you're working on. And thank you again so much for taking the time to chat with me. I've really enjoyed getting to pick your brain about how all of this works.
Thank you so much. I loved these questions. They were very thoughtful and deep, and I really had to think about some of my answers for them, which is honestly refreshing. So thank you so much
Oh, that's such a big compliment. I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for creating a space where intimacy coordinators can talk about the work that we're doing and hopefully normalize it by having more of this kind of conversation in the media.
Absolutely. I think we should all start with being a human first and communicating with everybody.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'll give you the rest of your day back, and it was so lovely chatting with you.
It was so lovely. Thanks.
That's all for today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out my amazing guest, Jamie. All of her socials are going to be linked in the description below. Make sure that you're following the Morning Brew podcast on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts, so that you don't miss any updates or any cool new episodes coming your way. And be sure to tune in next time because I've got part 2 with Brian K. and the Parkway.